So welcome everyone to today's masterclass on the science behind core embodiment. I think you will find that my version of science is not necessarily the common dominator, model of science, but it's my version of science. So I appreciate you joining me and exploring this very rich topic. And today's going to be a little different in that I am going to show some slides and kind of just lay down some information. And we will also have a bit of an experience of the practice at the end. So before I bring up my slides, I'd like to just invite everyone to take a moment and just settle in. Maybe just in your own way. Take a couple breaths, close the eyes, and just invite yourself into your seat. Allow your attention to descend, if you like, into those two sit bones where you can feel yourself in your seat. Maybe just wiggle in your seat a little bit and allow your breath to just descend down into your pelvic bowl, into your perineum. And allowing whatever busyness of your day, whatever's been having your attention, to just start to melt and relax, and inviting with each breath this fresh moment, this fresh welcoming of you here as you are. So if you want to just allow some audible exhales, some sighs, some sounds of letting go. And just letting your system, as you exhale and you let go, just start to sink down and in to this quality of contact with your seat and with the ground beneath you. Dropping into your weight, into gravity. And just welcoming yourself here. You might just say under your breath, I'm here. Welcoming me here. Sometimes bringing a hand contact, perhaps on the belly, is helpful in terms of, again, just anchoring the attention lower in the body and feeling yourself here in your seat or your heart, wherever you're called, to just bring some contact along your core. And welcoming yourself here as you are. No agenda or particular way that you need to be. Just here as you are. And see if you can notice any sensation right now that just lets you know you're alive. Feelings of aliveness. Perhaps you can feel the beating of your heart, the flow of your circulation, some heat in the body, qualities of pleasure or levity, as well as qualities of density or your weight. And just really allowing the breath to amplify anywhere you sense aliveness right now. And to amplify that aliveness even more, let's bring a little humming sound and just direct the hum into wherever you feel some aliveness right now in your system. And just, it's almost like your hum is a way to vibrate from the inside, as a way of amplifying that aliveness even more. So just a deep vibratory hum. 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 And one more time, and just taking this opportunity to really light up your channel. Maybe allow yourself to sit up a little taller, really landing your attention inside into your vibration. Great, and deep breath in. And really expand your breath into any new spaces that are opening up and feeling more alive inside. And exhaling, and again, just softening, letting go of any excess tension or gripping in the system. Just a couple nice deep breaths into your belly, into your perineum, and expanding up through your diaphragm, your heart, throat, center of the head. Growing your spine taller out of your seat and letting your shoulders drop, letting your heart open, allowing your head, your neck to grow a little taller, letting the jaw slightly open and unhinge. Great. So just feeling yourself hopefully more fully here in your seat, in your channel, heart open, available to listen, to receive, and to explore. You can slowly start to open the eyes and just a gentle, soft gaze. And welcome everyone who came in while I was leading that meditation. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up some slides. All right, so this is our conversation today. This is what we're going to be exploring. So I'm going to dive in. So I wanted to just start with a little personal backstory on the synthesis of this body of work. So this title, Core Embodiment, is the overarching name of my brand, and there are many different elements and dimensions inside of this brand and my practices. So Core Embodiment is that overall big view or big embrace of this body of work. However, inside of that, there is my actual core embodiment practice. It's a vertical seated practice. And today I'm going to go into a bit of the details around the practice, the science behind it. And, I was reflecting on how it was really many years of exploration and study in various bodies of work, that slowly there was like this layering or unraveling or revelation, really, of this practice. So one of the teachers that I studied with was a woman named Judith Blackstone. She's a non-dual psychotherapist. This was about 15 years ago. And at the same time, I was involved with, very, very deeply steeped in the biodynamic cranial worlds and practicing and teaching that work. And I was just starting to get into continuum, more of this somatic embodiment practice. And Judith Blackstone really emphasized in her work that we have this fundamental consciousness that resides in the core of our body, and that when we seat ourselves in this fundamental consciousness, we become available to essentially an immediate and innate simultaneous connection to this same fundamental consciousness in all of life. Meaning, when I'm seated in my core, I'm able to sort of transcend time and space and feel my connection to people I love, basically locate my connection anywhere on the planet. And I was really fascinated with this, and I went pretty deep. I did her training. And it was very illuminating in terms of being a long-term meditation practitioner and having, many very tangible awakenings of what I am. And yet there was something about having an actual location in my body that I could reference and that I could cultivate and that I could grow. And then I began to see that, there were many traditions, the Taoists, the yogis, the Tibetan Buddhists, many different esoteric and mystery school traditions that basically discovered the same territory, maybe wrapped a different map, a different language around it, but definitely discovered the same territory. So some systems call this the Sushumna, the chakra system, the three Dantians in the Taoists, the nadis, the Bindu points, various different systems that all went inside, right? Various yogic practitioners who all went inside and discovered. Now, at the same time, I was, again, deeply steeped in biodynamic cranial, and in that field, we study a lot of embryology, anatomy, physiology. And I was having a series of awakenings just in the study of embryology, where I would study something like the development of the midline and something called primitive streak, that first sort of spark or ignition behind the development of my heart and my gut and my neurology. And I would have these sort of memories or recognitions or ahas that really felt in a way like I was being baptized or I was cracking God's code without necessarily meaning to. Some of you have maybe heard me tell the story of one night I was preparing to teach a biodynamic cranial course, and I was in this deep study around, the development of the midline. And there was this moment where it was like this light, this streaming of this bioelectric light and this tone moved through my core, and I burst into tears. And I just felt the holy, I just felt like I was intimately being seen and felt and known in a way that I had longed for my whole life. It almost brings tears just talking about it now. It was like the most intimate meeting. And I stepped outside. It was a beautiful black starry night, no moon, and I just looked up at the stars and I was just like, oh. I felt like I was being given this holy mantle to carry in a way of the beauty and the holy nature of our origin story and how we land here. So in some of my other courses, some of you maybe have seen me go through more of a detail around that origin story in our development. I'm not going to do that so much today. But I do just want to share that there was these layers that just started to come in for a landing. So eventually I, about 5 years ago, came to live in Hawaii again. And it was in this very poignant moment. I had just lost one of my longest attachment relationships, which happened to be with a feline. And my heart was just really cracked open. And I felt that I had a deeper bond that needed to happen with this planet. There was a deeper calling to re-umbilicalize with Gaia. I knew in some way that I was hovering, that I wasn't fully incarnated into my full flesh body and therefore into a full joining with the biofield. And so I was called to come to Hawaii because it's a place that's very alive with nature. So I started to lie on the earth and breathe with the earth, and I started to entrain with these deeper, slower rhythms. And there was a deeper process of grieving and letting go of various ways that I was entrained with the culture in California and just these speedier, faster rhythms. And I was also in this process of writing a book about all of this various accumulation that was growing, that was already forming itself, called core embodiment. So this practice started to develop as a way of basically getting out of my own way and accessing my channel and finding a relationship with my muse to write. And so over time, I just started to discover that the practice could be used in all kinds of ways, not only for receiving guidance. It could be used to basically clean the slate if I felt clogged up. If I had too many narratives running, it was a great way to empty. It was a very practical way to receive guidance for very real decisions and choices in my life. And it was also a very deep and intimate way to access the core of who I am and to feel deeply centered and presenced. And so I started to just practice every day. And I noticed that I was basically state shifting. I was going into these much more clarified, rarefied, nuanced states of perception where basically I felt whole. I felt undivided. I felt congruent. So I thought, this is really exciting. I want to start sharing this with people. And so I did. And they started having similar experiences. And then right around the same time, I found Joe Dispenza's book on becoming supernatural. And I noticed that he was doing a very similar practice that I was. Only he wasn't bringing in sound or touch. He was just working with the breath and positive affirmations, basically. And he had all this data, all this really fancy equipment to read the impact of his practices on people, and people were having these profound healing miracles, basically, turning off certain genes, upregulating other genes, completely shifting people's epigenetics and their karma, shifting their DNA. And so I thought, well, if I had the equipment to study what was happening here, it's got to be as powerful, because we're bringing in a whole nother depth of accessing these inner state shifts by bringing sound and touch. So fast forward, I had a pilot study done, which I'll go into in a little bit and show you some of what came out of that. So first, and this is just a photo of me here in Iao Valley in Maui, joining with nature. So I want to just, before I show you the pilot study, I want to show you the basic, the essential intimacy keys, I call them, to this practice. And how we allow the intersection of these 5 essential intimacy keys to produce an inner alchemical transformation of our neurochemistry, therefore our physical structure, our emotional states, and our overall balanced regulation. So that's what we're up to. So the way that we access these state changes, these are the keys. Number 1, our breath. Obviously, there's no true transformational path without involving the breath, as far as I can tell. The breath is the intersection of where our autonomic nervous system, meaning what's just on automatic pilot, and our conscious relationship to that, we can come in and we can participate, right? The breath, we can actually consciously engage. And so we know that various fixations, compensatory patterns, our unresolved history, our traumas, emotional stress, are all maintained by inhibiting the movement of our breath, right? When we feel like I don't want to feel something, what do? I clench down, I repress my breath. I tend to get more shallow upper respiratory breathing. So by engaging various qualities of breathing, we're able to stimulate a wider spectrum of internal sensations and responses, our capacity to respond and allow ourselves more fully to land in our bodies, more fully to feel, more fully to be here. And our breath is the intermediary where we also start to access greater levels of healing, greater flow states, and coherence are activated or enhanced by the dexterity of our breath. So I see some nodding heads. Has everyone here had some experience with working with breath in various ways where you know what I'm talking about? I can't see everyone, but I can imagine that you all have. All right, so the next essential intimacy is our touch. Again, this is unique to a meditative practice in that we actually engage our skin-to-skin contact, which directly connects us with our nervous system. And the skin being the largest proprioceptive perceiving organ, again, that directly goes into our central nervous system. And when we make skin-to-skin contact, we have this interesting way where we come into what's called a double circuit. So try this with me for a moment. If you bring your hand, let's say, to your face, you can feel your hand coming in slowly and actually feel your hand receiving or perceiving your face. So you can feel your hand actually touching, receiving the sensation of your face. Take a breath there, and you can also feel your face receiving your touch. Take another breath and just kind of feel this back and forth double current of both touching and allowing a receptivity to your touch. So immediately we start to feel some heat in this skin-to-skin contact. And heat is one way that our human mammals feel love. It's one of the interesting aspects of being a mammal, right? There's heat. We're warm-blooded creatures. So we start to generate a feeling of heat, of warmth, and therefore a feeling of love just through our touch. So then we layer in sound. Now sound in this context is not so much an external performance like singing a song, but we're creating an internal vibration that invites interoception, our capacity to feel inside, to drop directly into a felt sense of what's happening inside my body. So sound is an audible breath, right? We go, ah, or oh. I'm allowing the sound to be carried by my exhale. So it's an audible exhale. So the really cool thing that's happening here is I'm elongating my exhale, which is allowing me to increase my capacity to breathe in, to elongate my in-breath. And so in this way, we're creating more space inside. Our sounds are basically creating shapes or creating new spaces inside of our tissues. And we know that sound is the most potent in terms of penetrating dense tissue. And what is dense tissue? Dense tissue is just our habitual ways of being organized, of identifying with this is me, this is how I breathe, this is how I speak, this is how I perceive. When that's coupled with a neurochemistry of more of a chronic stress or fight-flight, more of the neurochemistry of adrenaline and cortisol, the fluids of my body become more locked up, become more gel-like, and all of my internal organs and cardiovascular system, lymphatic system, venous system, all of my systems are basically floating in fluid, intracellular ground substance. And when I'm in more of a gel state, more of a stress state, everything gets squeezed and doesn't function as well. My cell signals shut down. My organs relationships shut down. My capacity to perceive, my heart, my feeling, my soul, my essence becomes more dimmed. And I just become more identified with being a separate me and being run by a nervous system that's dysregulated. So that's my long-winded way of explaining what tension is, what we feel as tension or pain or being locked up, feeling like we're in a closed system. So bringing our sound, our touch, elongating our exhales, elongating our inhales, we're literally creating new shapes and creating more space in our body. And we're creating an inner climate of oxytocin, of serotonin, dopamine, of these feel-good chemicals, because I'm bringing my love to bear. I'm bringing my warmth. I'm bringing my presence, which allows my body to start to feel safe, to let go, and to receive more nourishment, the nourishment of my natural chemistry set of these feel-good neurochemicals. So in the practice, we can literally direct our sounds into those places where we feel the most tension in our bodies. Let's say we've got a lot of tension in the head. We can bring our hands there. We can literally bring a sound and our touch and start to create more space around where we feel that tension. So I was already speaking to this. Another really important component is that we're not just doing this practice in a mechanical way. We are creating an inner climate of eros, of warmth, of love, of safety. And so we're bringing this deep, intimate relatedness to our experience, softening around any hard or effortful or dense or numb areas, and allowing our touching and our sounding to be held inside of an awareness of curiosity, of genuine interest, and respect for whatever's actually here. So allowing is key. We're not forcing or pushing or over-efforting. We're literally landing and allowing what's here to be here. In a way, that's my definition of love, right? We feel love in an environment of being with, whether it's someone else being with us or being with ourselves. We don't feel loved so much when someone, or including ourselves, we're trying to fix ourselves or change ourselves or dominate ourselves or get rid of something, right? All of that is a subtle violence to it. So we bring our heart's awareness to bear upon this deep, intimate relatedness and start to ignite this deeper holding ground. Is a very important key to this practice. And lastly, what starts to be ignited as we create more space is we also start to create more flow. And we tap into more of our intrinsic movement or our embryological movement, the original movement motifs that created us in utero. So a lot of those movement motifs arise as wave motion, spiral motion, sometimes undulation, the movements of water, right? Again, we're primarily comprised of water. And so essentially part of our state shifting is that now we're entering into more of our fluid body, our body that's connected to nature, that's more of nature rather than of culture. I think of that dense, more mechanical, separate self body as our cultural anatomy. It's the anatomy that we inherited and that we were born into and that we entrained with. That's largely living out of our heads. Again, shallow breathing, disconnection from our ground. So we start to now, as I just shared all of these various intimacy keys, we start to tap into this more innate freedom of movement. So essentially what we're doing in the practice is we're pattern interrupting our normal ways of being fixated or identified with this is what I am, this is who I am. And we're freeing ourselves from being bound in those particular time-space orientations, meaning so much referencing our history, projecting into our future. We're actually landing in here and now, in the intimacy of here I am in this fresh moment, and becoming more free to be at choice about what I want to do with my moment, how I want to direct my creative energy. Again, how I want to receive my guidance or my creative expression or whatever it is. So the three main areas that in this seated core embodiment practice that we focus on is the central channel, but specifically these three main oscillating centers, meaning the three main biologically largest electromagnetic fields in the body: the heart, the hara, or the belly, the gut brain, and the head center, or our higher brain centers. So as the body becomes less dense, we start to return to this deep sense of coherency, almost like my head, my heart, my gut are now starting to communicate and hum, and I start to feel congruent and lined up with, what I feel, what I'm thinking, and what I'm doing. How I'm behaving is a reflection of what I feel authentically on the inside. And that, my friends, is my definition of being embodied, right? Is we feel a felt sense of not being divided inside, of being fully lined up with my heart, my belly, my deep feeling nature. And all of that is kind of bottom up communicating to my brain how to orient, how to perceive, how to discern, how to communicate clearly. It's a wonderful, gorgeous, exquisite design that we are given. So the practice is basically a way to clean and clarify and vitalize our innate design. It's already here. So I already start to speak to that in the practice, the main focus is these 3 centers. Again, many different traditions and mystery schools and sciences have discovered. They're all starting to kind of line up these days in the understanding that these 3 centers are our main perceiving or portals of perception, how we're actually experiencing our moment. Now again, most of us living in Western culture, we're more cultivated up here. And for many of us, it takes some practice, some cultivation to really land ourselves in the center of the heart and in the center of the gut brain and be able to reference those centers more spontaneously, more as where I'm coming from, where I'm living from. And, really, it's like, why would we want to do that? Well, there's a depth of our magnetism that starts to come online. It's like you can feel it when someone walks in the room and they're present and they're embodied and they're here, compared to someone who's distracted, divided, ungrounded, right? There's a lot of power when we walk into a room and we're fully here, inhabiting our perineum, our gut brain, our heart, and listening and perceiving and sharing ourselves from here. There's a whole different potency to the magnetic field that we're sharing. All right. So I'm going to go into the pilot study in a moment here, but I guess I put this slide up for a reason. This is a link to learning more, if you like, about the actual core embodiment practice and about a 6-month container that I've got coming up starting October 8th, where we go in depth into cultivating these 3 dantians. I teach everyone this core embodiment practice, and we learn how to access these flow states and coherent states to bring to bear upon our creative, whatever it is that we're giving birth to, either externally in our lives or just more internally, our own inner development and embodiment and self-actualization. So if you're interested, write down that URL and check it out further. All right, and I'm going to pull up one more slide. Okay, so this is just a little PDF on the pilot study that I had done in 2021. I mentioned that I have a little psychobiology geek for sure. And I mentioned that I was really curious when I read Joe Dispenza's book of what would be the science, what would be the data in terms of brainwave state changes in my practice. And it was really interesting timing. I just want to say briefly that I met someone here on Maui the other day who's been studying with Joe Dispenza and just came back from a couple of his retreats. And we got to talking, and I said, I'd love to share my practice with you and see if you can tell me if you notice anything similar or, what do you notice? And so I shared it with him yesterday, and he found it to be quite powerful in that Joe, again, doesn't bring in the touch component or the sound component. And he found that in the half an hour we spent together, that he was able to access very similar states that he does with Joe, only a lot faster. So that was kind of inspiring and interesting to get that little direct biofeedback. And this is what the pilot study showed was, and this was through an organization called Future Design Life, where they do lots of different kinds of measurements through EEGs. So it was just a basic little device that we hooked up to a number of people's brains where I led them through the practice, just a half an hour at a time. And we got this consistent neurofeedback measurement. In this particular study, we were measuring coherence and flow states. There's different metrics you can study, but this was what I was interested in. So in the practice, basically, we're shifting the magnetic poles of the body, and we begin to grow the magnetic field of those core oscillating centers, and thus we're growing the entire magnetic field of our body, sometimes called the toroidal field, right? That toroidal flow through space where electromagnetic energy from the earth is rising up through our core in this motion, and then we're also receiving energy, biocosmic energy, coming down through the crown, through the core. And inside of that space, we're taking a deeper seat inside of ourselves. And what we found, just for those of you who aren't familiar with the definition of what a flow state is, basically, in positive psychology, a flow state is also known as being in the zone, or it's the mental state in which a person is performing some activity and is fully immersed in a feeling of energized focus, full involvement, and enjoyment in the process of the activity. So in essence, flow is characterized by a complete absorption in what one does and a resulting transformation in one sense of time. So you often hear people who are doing, ceramics or painting a picture or writing a book in some kind of creative act where they completely lose track of time, just in the zone. Sometimes extreme sports, rock climbing or any kind of extreme sport, people are often in that flow state. We also discovered that the practice had equally high coherence. So, definition of coherence is a metric that can be measured when there's a mathematical method to determine if two or more brain regions have similar neuronal oscillatory activity with each other. So since the 1960s, coherence has generally been assessed on the similarity of the frequency intent across EEG sensors. States of psychological coherence allow an efficient, harmonious functioning of a whole self. So again, maybe some of you have felt this quality of feeling deeply coherent. It's like there's a feeling of profound well-being, fully in your moment, fully present, no sense of danger or threat. And again, we have a heightened sense of creativity. When we're in fight or flight, we shut down our creative sensors because all of our neurology is ready to fight or to run, or we're in a freeze state. So it's very difficult to access creativity, especially our higher brain centers when we're in those states. So why would we want to access flow and coherence? Well, I partly just said. But yeah, I would say, the main thing is if you're someone who wants to obtain overall health, feel whole, feel embodied, feel empowered, have all your circuits running and flowing and communicating, as well as an increase in your mental clarity, your creative power, having a consistent access to really bringing through who you came here to be and do, and being in a more sustaining kind of engagement with whatever it is you love, whatever it is that you're bringing through. So greater focus, greater connection to your purpose. So here's just a little graph to just show you some of these. This was from the study, a little bit of these balance of these brainwave states moving from higher to lower levels of coherence and flow. Now, this was on the EEG, and it was actually a moving apparatus. This is a screenshot of it, so it's a still. But you can imagine this moving, and then the overall sort of synthesis of the half an hour practice. What they found was that basically the measurements of the neurofeedback depicted a balanced state of flow and coherence, resulting in maximum creativity and focus. This is just another sort of screenshot from our study. It's just sort of a different organization of showing these various brain states: delta, theta, low alpha, high alpha, SMR, low beta, mid beta, high beta, gamma. Essentially, the movement of these various brain states landed as a balance between high coherence and high flow. What else can I say here? So the people who did the study told me that it's actually rare that any one technique can be used to create this quality of change in such a short time frame while remaining consistent throughout the participants' experience. So remaining consistent throughout the study. So this was consistent throughout the entire pilot study that took place over a year. So that was pretty cool to get that feedback. And I guess that's it. Just a short little dealy bop. Let's see. Hang on one second. Okay. Can you see me again? Did the share go away? Okay. Great. So what I'd like to do with the rest of our time is just give you a little bit of an experience of the practice and just bring together all of these various pieces so you can feel it. I'm not going to teach the whole practice here on this little free masterclass, but I do want to give you just a feeling taste of it, if you like. So I think for today, what I'd like to focus on is the heart center, because probably most of us on the call have some access to our heart center, and it's for some people more easy to access than the lower dantian, than the hara. As Western people, that tends to be our least cultivated area. And so in the 6-month program, we spend an entire month just cultivating the hara, our root system, opening up that pathway of kind of re-umbilicalizing with Gaia and feeling safe to be in our lower bodies, safe to be with our sexual energy, our power, our creative energy. And what I find is that when we are more landed in the lower body and more vital there, that's what gives the message to my heart that it's safe to open and just authentically be here, be me, feel what I feel, be human. And so there's a beautiful correlation between cultivating the gut, brain, and the heart. And then eventually, once we've got the core online, there's a natural way that there's a communication to the brain, and we can start to open up the higher brain centers. So that's kind of the trajectory. And then eventually we've got the whole practice, and we start to really hone in on these flow states and bring it to bear upon whatever we want to in our lives. So for today, let's just say hello to our beautiful hearts. And to do that, what I suggest is that you get a comfortable position, and preferably seated. You can close the eyes and just start to allow your exhales to drop you deeper into your sit bones. As much as you can allow the feeling of the earth rising up to hold you, ground you, support you. Exhaling out any excess tension or gripping, really letting your weight yield into gravity. And let's bring a hand to the heart. You can bring one or both. And just start to, again, receive your touch. Feel your heart receiving your hand. And feel your hand touching in with your heart. Noticing the breath flowing in and out. Chest rising, falling. And starting to drop your attention fully into your touch, your breath, your heart. If you want to bring the other hand and make some contact with your belly, just as a way of supporting yourself to also just really be grounded in your seat, I welcome you to do that. So as we start to drop into our hearts, just begin to appreciate your beautiful heart. You might start to drop in with just saying, hello, hello, my beautiful heart. And starting to feel yourself here. Feel the qualities of your love. The ways in which you care. The ways in which you deeply feel. So often we feel our love and our care as it moves outwards. So I'm inviting you right now to just start to back up and feel and appreciate this seat of consciousness that is your heart, and just starting to receive you here, receive your love. So breathing in a breath of reception, of receptivity. You may begin to actually notice your heart beating in your chest. Dropping into even more intimacy with that beat of your heart. That vitality lets you know you're alive and you're here. And we're going to start to bring the sound we work with for the heart center, which is the sound Lola, L-O-L-A. So lo, lo, deep vibratory internal sound, lo. And then la, la, ah. The ah, very much a heart sound, ah. And then we play a little bit with the tongue flicking the palate. Now there's a whole lot I could say about why we do that. But for now, just knowing the tip of the tongue is the yin of your, in Chinese medicine, your conception vessel, or your governing vessel, meeting the hard, the yang of your palate. So there's a way that energetically we're igniting, we're kind of flipping that switch of that core circuitry. So part of the lo la, we also go into So I'm flicking my tongue on my palate. So I'm going to go between lo and la 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 and la ah. So between those three kind of nuanced ways of making different shapes with my mouth and my sound and my internal vibration. So I'll begin and just listen to the sound, and then you can start to join me. And as you join in, again, we're bringing our full attention to our heart, to our touch, and to this internal vibration, being intimate on the inside with what we are opening up inside. So deep breath in. So let's just keep going a little bit. Receive my sound and just sort of explore your own version. Don't worry about getting it exactly like me. Just explore different shapes, different intonations, and really, how can I massage into my heart tissue? That's really the inquiry here with my vibration. So when you're ready, go ahead and pause the sound and allow yourself to take a nice deep breath in and exhale, letting go. And another nice deep breath in and filling up into any new spaces that are opening inside. And exhaling and letting go. And another nice deep full breath, filling, filling, filling. And exhaling, letting go. And on our next in-breath, we're going to play with a little breath retention. So filling, 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 filling. And at the top of that in-breath, squeeze your root, squeeze your perineum like a mula bandha. Draw the breath up, let your shoulders drop, let your chin tuck, lift the eyes to your crown, like lift your eyes up, tuck your chin, and just retain the breath and be with you on the inside. And exhale when you need to. And let's try that one more time. Deep breath in and filling, filling, filling from the earth up all the way through your channel. Filling, filling, filling. Drop your shoulders. Squeeze your root at the top of that in-breath. Draw the breath up. Tuck your chin. Lift your eyes. Bring your tongue to your palate and hold the breath. Be with you on the inside. Just intimate with your heartbeat. And exhaling, letting go. And one more breath retention. Deep, deep breath. Full, full, full. Filling, filling, filling. Drop the shoulders. Allow the breath to come all the way up, filling the heart, filling the chest at the top of that in-breath. Squeeze the perineum. Draw the life force up. Tuck the chin, lift the eyes, bring the tongue to the palate, squeeze everything in, retain the breath, and be intimate with your heartbeat. And exhaling as you need to. And just staying here in your seat, returning to your natural breath. We'll just allow a little open attention, just simply allowing any subtle shifts, reorganizations, releasing, reorganizing, allowing your breath to flow into any new areas of spaciousness, openness, pleasure, warmth. Completely relaxing and allowing any subtle reorganization throughout your core, flowing through your entire body, mind, and heart. And just appreciating, enjoying the pleasure of your own presence, hopefully feeling a little more clarified, embodied, potent, empowered, enfleshed. Really just feeling yourself more fully here in your seat, on the ground, on the earth. Tall spine, relaxed nervous system, open heart, rooted, soft belly. So if we were to continue with this practice, we might drop in an inquiry into this space, a question we might have in terms of some kind of guidance or some creative project. You can take a moment and just welcome anything that may be arising in your clarity. Just explore leaning in towards that place inside where you receive, where you can perceive with a kind of trustworthy receptivity. And just gently asking, is there anything for me in this moment to be shown? And just thanking that deep, wise intelligence inside for anything that percolated up, that was revealed. And let's bring the hands together and just rub them and generate a little heat. And just bring your hands to the body. If there's anywhere you want a little massage, a little touch. And let's slowly, gently start to allow ourselves to come back into the group field. So most of you are off camera still, that's fine. All right, so that was just a taste. That was definitely not the full practice, but hopefully you got a little bit of a feeling of some of the space that can open. And basically we are complete today, unless there's any questions anyone has. You can raise your hand or come on camera and just speak up.
Yeah, this is Greg. I have
Hi.
a question.
Hi, Greg.
Hi. During your slides, you mentioned that during the experiment that the state was remained consistent for 1 year. And I was curious about whether that was while the person was practicing that every day, or was that like they had achieved a certain state and they no longer practiced, and then that state was maintained throughout?
Right. No, it was specifically measuring while they were doing the practice. So every time we measured the practice, it was consistent in terms of what was showing up. But we couldn't measure a person for an entire year. I mean, I suppose you could keep
Yeah,
an
yeah.
EEG on them. But being the main person who's been practicing this for years, I would say that my overall nervous system tone has increased, or my capacity to self-regulate has increased consistently. And I would say the baseline of my experience overall is one of feeling more grounded and at home in my body and more coherent in terms of my thinking process and my relationship to my emotions. Doesn't mean that I always feel that way, but I know how to bring myself back if I get off or dysregulated. But I haven't, put an EEG on someone for a year to do that study that you're pointing to. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else have any questions or anything they want to share?
So you have another question. Your core um, embodiment practice that starts in October, you said it runs for 6 weeks?
6 months.
6 months. Okay. And that's once a week?
There's 3 meetings a month. We have a meeting that's just presenting you with whatever we're focusing on that month. So say it was the heart. We would have a slideshow and a presentation on really getting into the esoteric physiology and anatomy of the heart and
Mhm.
what I'm wanting to impart. And then we'd have another session just teaching you the somatic practice, exploring that. And then we have a third session that's basically a coaching call where people can have hot seat coaching, some peer reflection. If you're bringing one of the unique components to the 6-month program is that if you want to, you can bring a specific creative project. Let's say you're writing a book or you're creating a program or whatever it is. You can bring a thing, or if you're just using this time to really bring in your own inner development, that's fine too. But that third meeting is a time where we can really explore how it's affecting our creative process and, get some feedback, have some reflection. Because what I find often is that when we're in creation mode, it's very vulnerable. And often we're very isolated in that process. So there's something about having company in the vulnerability that arises and bringing what's alive inside of us forward. Having a safe, intimate space to do that, as well as having space for people to have individual coaching if they want. So there's 3 calls a month, Zoom calls.
And what is the cost of the program?
Well, the way that I generally have people, or explore that with people, is you fill out an application, and then we meet privately, and then we go into it. Because the way I'm working with people, I've been giving a pretty big discount to people who came in and did the series, the Blueprint Imprint series. I give an even bigger discount to folks who are in my membership. It's kind of determined based on our relationship. And some people I even give a discount or a scholarship if they need that. So that's kind of the steps to the process, is to just, if you feel called, to fill out the application, and then we can meet and see if it's really a right fit. And then it's sort of like the money and the time, the Saturn piece, because I have to also coordinate various time zones and lining that up. But I want to get the heart online first, and the soul online first, and the body online first. And then we see if it matches up with Saturn, if that makes sense. Because sometimes Saturn just deters us out the gate, and I want to not do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there another way I can access that link? I didn't write it down, and I probably won't write it down if you show it to me again. I'm just wondering if there's another place I can click on it.
I will send a follow-up email with this replay, and it's in there. And if you're on my email list, which I think you are, I've been certainly putting this out here for the last few weeks. It's in there. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Craig.
Yeah, thank you.
Just seeing you guys in the chat. I am going to just write it in here for any of you who do want to take it off the chat. Okay. Any other questions or shares before we complete the call?
Yeah, I have a question.
Hi, Stephanie.
Hello. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm wondering how much you go into your embryology, I think is the word you used. And I wonder if that's kind of similar to what you just said about going into the metaphysical, kind of esoteric anatomy of the heart and the different centers.
Yeah. I do go into my creation story and our original development, because our toroidal field is basically set up at implantation, when the primitive streak begins and the whole development of the midline begins. So I do go into that in the first month of this program. And the first month, we're really just establishing our basic ground of creating a climate of eros, or sort of, in a way, if any of us had birth trauma or trauma around our conception, the program, we're basically tracing the steps of our development. So we start with conception and what that means symbolically, because what I've seen over time is that there's a sequencing in our early development, in our embryological process, that continues throughout life. And they're symbolic, they're literal qualities. So yes, we go into that, especially in the first module, and then it starts to go more into the actual centers in the following modules. Yeah. Yeah, it's so beautiful. I mean, it's
Yeah, thank you.
it's
Yeah.
it's a really beautiful piece to reclaim. That's
Mm,
why I call this foundation program Reclaiming Our Original Blueprint,
mhm,
because that's really what we're up to. Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, I particularly loved that piece in the 4-day sessions you offered,
Okay, so you did see that. Great, great.
learning about that.
Yeah.
I did, and I was like, this is so important. So I really related to that. So I'd love to know more. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Mhm.
Well, any last anythings before we complete? Thank you for your note, Lion. I really appreciate you all joining me live today and just receiving and experiencing. And yeah, if you want to come learn more about this, check out the URL, fill out an application. I just extended our start date by a week, and it seemed a few people who wanted to join needed that, and so I went with it. And maybe that will allow a few more of you to join in. So, but it is coming up, and if you want to be a part of clarifying those time zones that work, that's helpful. So the application is on that main URL of that page. Many places it's on there, so yeah. All right, everyone. Well, blessings to you, and thank you for spending this time with me. And I send you just much gratitude and much love.
Yeah, thank you.
Take good care.